当然所谓的罗种刺激面的操作的，说了个对吧的，给吧的嘛属于。
Lasso. Continuing from this morning's presentation, I will now discuss the 7th and 8th verses from the text called The 8 Verses for Training the Mind.
大家对吧的了呀？干啥？对吧的了？이런 거를 규바.
Dornangö som gybai.
다른 것은 규바에 팬데만함 그랑 그 뭐? 아니
Mai dunge.
마이
Mai nödan dunge kon.
마이 뇌도 동에 그 상에 달렘 다글렘 쇼스.
Lasso.
다들 저디 동랭기 냠레를 송유스래.
Lasso. The 7th verse says, "In sum, whether directly or indirectly, may I offer all benefit and joy to my mothers. When my mothers are harmed or suffer, may I secretly take these harms upon myself." The main practice taught by this verse, I think, is the practice of tonglen, sending and taking.
단들려야지 상에 다 렘버스 상와사데라 구규로 니에서 삼정도
Lasso.
초지네 아니다 그래 상에 담바제버 차순就是지단기 다시 제외기 명안디 알 되네 초가담바 가담비게 지 고만디스 qab리야 디 상외 명안으로 쓰는 장도 미 상월로리아 배아마이바 지 가사 개버지 가시의 냠술래야로 지미 유산에 다 디기 차네 상와사디 가사 탐지기 냠술래야 다지 저지세란 장도 야나 냠술래야기 뇌도 뭐 줘봐.
Lasso. I think that the word secretly that appears in this verse can be interpreted to hold two meanings. The first meaning of secrecy here refers to the fact that traditionally, in the Kadampa lineage, the practices for exchanging self and other, including tonglen or sending and taking meditation, were held to be secret practices that weren't taught to everyone generally. So this was the way in which these instructions were held originally in the tradition of Atisha. The instructions were only given to certain individuals who had done the proper preparations and were taught to be held back from individuals who were not suitable vessels for those instructions.
다들이야 신실 강과도 사지 상와사들 구유지데 다금들이야지 심제 신기 지기 가르에 너바다 동에 다담지 지기 장게래 장게 편바다 대화 탐지 신라 진선을 자도 단도나지 심제 신기 된차디 아주 장게 된샤래다 개체스는 다도야나 장게 된 심제 신된데 장게 된 첨부지긴 버지 진짜지량 문진 체제这个심제 신된 차디 렌다라와 매버지 고요하래 데레주자는 지 미션 상와사들이야 안 구유신다지 가도사나 지 미션다 게지 어다 게 콜레야 펜다 펜 다와당 다나시 신기지 뇌바 rang lemba la so da tam ji xin gi ha ma wa che ne ane xian la pen da kwa ru chi tene de ji kwa men do sam chang do
Laso, shen gi hama ko wachine.
paru bo de ha ma ha go so na ji ya len da re wa yo ban ru cha ro wa
La re. Another meaning of secrecy that applies here is that the meaning of Tonglen practice or sending and taking meditation is that we take upon ourselves the harms and sufferings of other sentient beings, and we send to them all of our own benefit and happiness. In this way, we come to regard the benefit of others as more important than the benefit of ourselves. And in fact, we come to regard accomplishing the benefit of others as the supreme way to accomplish our own benefit. When we go about doing this, we must be free from hope for reciprocation of the benefit that we give to others. We shouldn't hope for anything in return for our beneficial actions. And so to avoid fixation on such hope, it's taught that we should benefit others secretly. In other words, in a way in which they don't even know we were the ones who helped them. If we benefit beings in a way that in which we make them know that it is us who are assisting them, then that can become an attitude that involves hope and expectation for some kind of reward.
다지 동네 사데 장게 대화 파다 신기 동에 수련 사데 physically 토네 텐제 용토야데 가보르시 자리 여러 섬정도 다든지 physical 토네 렌 통계 가사 텐제다 별이야 제리니제 텐제 배수연도 텐제 셔야 여래 대zam도 마세베 가사 오늘 전에 living person zam도 마세베 양 꾼더도 텐데 롱발이야 내염 총비 겁리야 안지 별이야 룸내에서 나야 여러봐
Lasa?
다지 담 소보리야 무른도 막 먹겠지
Lasa?
안 지시 나 시도니 막 보시라 용거
Lasa?
제가 꾼더 텐데기 롱발이야 텐데기 내염 총비 겁리야 아는 꾼더디 셰래야 무르 막 먹겠지
Lasa?
그 매배 좀 무르 막 먹겠지 텐데기 다 되게 나서 동해 망부 가서 뒤기 내야 망부지 코랑기 군더디 레버레서 하지
Lasa?
되게 기르셔야 별 용대 가래
Lasa?
당문에 지금 가서 다 인베스트 다 간다 되게 believe 되게 거지 용대 가래
Lasa?
저 근데 physical 토안에 레사데 다 가사를 이름마다 요 말해 다디 소대가 저기 지 소대가 저 샘게 토안에 아니 지 동해래 아직 가르쳐다지 physical 토안에 많이 지 mentally mental altitude 산하다 드지게 토안에 지 소소 샘데 닝도 참으로 드지야지 량 아주 정달하지 드지게 말해 드지 아주 지 정달을 체체 가다 아주 샘데 지 닝도 생기 동해래야 지 가르라지 shum바메바체지 동해 통은 주 스텔지 샘 shum바당 지샘 직작 올라서 근데 매바체지 샘 닝도 체계를 붙이지 근데 지 동해래야베 아주 지범매베 통하네 아니 지 동해 타는 체도야 근데 지가 다 쇠바세는 장도 야나 닝도 콤베도 동아 근데 지 말해
So the practice of Tonglen meditation, taking and sending meditation,
마시 안데 physical 토안에 갈아 가보지 차려. 근데 심전 탐지의 동해디 수수기 다다 physical 디토리아사 가보러.
라레.
요아야 말아.
Lare.
네.
The practice of Tonglen meditation, sending and taking, involves sending sentient beings all of one's own happiness and taking upon oneself all of the sufferings of beings. But it's very difficult to effect that type of transference in a physical way. There have been given a few examples throughout the history of Tibetan Buddhism of masters who were literally able to physically take on the sufferings of others onto themselves. But those examples are extremely rare. However, not only were there said to be living persons who are capable of this, there are also legends of certain statues that were said to be capable of taking on the sufferings of other sentient beings. There are stories of a statue that was being guided upon a type of relic tour so that people could receive the blessings of the statue. And it was in an area where people were suffering from a certain disease that appeared as lumps on the skin, and many people were dying from this disease, that one of the symptoms of which was lumps on the skin. And it's said in this certain legend that when the statue visited that area, the statue started to grow lumps on the skin of the statue, and thus remove or reduce the suffering of the sentient beings who were afflicted by that disease. Statue Kurangi, di Dungeagi, Dunge Lemba.
Not true.
Not true.
Just in the sort of in the monastery.
Lare.
But sometimes that monastery attacked by something,
Disease.
this kind of disease.
Lare.
Yeah.
Yes. And then the statue came.
Statue Quran dar dedo came drogo mara.
Oh, Lasso, sorry.
No.
Lasso. But then when the
In
sick
that
people
monastery, that particular monastery,
came. Lasso.
have any sort of this kind of disease,
Lasso?
then statue the Quran.
Oh, Lasso. So, sorry, that was the translator's mistake earlier when it was said that the statue was brought on a tour. It wasn't brought on a tour, it was stationary at a particular monastery, in the area of which there were sentient beings suffering from this certain vicious disease, one of the symptoms of which was that painful bumps or lumps arose on the skin. And it said that this statue then began to develop lumps on its skin, and thus was taking on the sufferings of others. So there are stories of this nature. There is this type of belief in certain instances of the practice of Tonglen being very literal and physical. But aside from that, it would be very hard for us to physically take upon the sufferings of sentient beings upon ourselves. Moreover, it would be extremely difficult for us to be able to bear the suffering of all sentient beings in our own single body. The main point, then, of Tonglen practice isn't to try to do it physically, but to engage in Tonglen as a method for training our mind, to take it as a mental action in order to adjust our attitude mentally and increase the strength of our heart, so that when we witness the suffering of other sentient beings, rather than shying away from it or wanting to avoid it, it increases the strength of our heart, increases the strength of our compassion. It makes our heart and mind more vast and more broad. We become more and more willing to go out and meet the sufferings of sentient beings. By engaging in the mental practice of Tonglen, we develop more and more patience and strength of heart and cause these qualities to flourish further and further. Teda kungyang chugegi. Then the 8th verse says, all the while, may I be uncorrupted by thoughts of the 8 worldly concerns, with a mind that knows all things to be illusions. Free of clinging, may I be liberated from the fetters. Lazo. This verse is connected to the view of emptiness. Free from the reification of the 8 worldly concerns, we train our mind in the illusion-like outlook that sees that things are not real. Lasso?
Space, opportunity, the source,
Lasso?
Susugi number tobe draw tane. We need to tolia. You name number tobe draw tane, mangush soyong or tachi number tobeki, tuba, mambuchi on the other, tunang mambuchi. Tony going tender tuna de says, so originate kawaii and tell a ma, law on it. And just Susugi, but zero which are machinch.
Lasso?
안 게든 막 저러지로 마친지 니야 신이 고럽주가지 서버지 삼로 사버를 좀 고주돼야지 시에마다 가족이 삼로 닝바 나와 추번 닝바 뒤즈기 가솔이야 디 파샤가 왕기 엔다지 가두이 내지 그런 디 파샤가 왕기 엔다지 또바 서버를 비게야지다 아니 야나지 시럽 서버를 freshness karbe lotus server bya kala khabish gales lotus server ke ba chabalya ngel ta de gi ji thube ge draw ta be gi ane ji bhasha da thube draw ta be gi karjura da ji xianba cinzin dige de samala ma shior che ma zero no so ji ane shine ji karjura sabakya ji
Lasso?
Very basic. Return to the basics.
Lasso? There are all kinds of ways in which the term emptiness can be explained or interpreted. Sometimes emptiness is explained to be what is called a non-implicative negation. Sometimes it is explained in the manner of an implicative negation. Or in simpler language, we could say that sometimes emptiness is explained to mean no, and sometimes emptiness is explained to mean not. Emptiness is not nothingness. The basic meaning of emptiness is the basic space that is the source of everything. It is the source of all new opportunities. It is the opposite from our usual habit of fixation, which prevents freshness from arising. Our usual habit is to follow after the projections of our thoughts. Our confused thoughts are busy all of the time, making projections on top of what is actually happening. Through emptiness, we let go of all of those confused projections and return to our original state. So all of that confused projecting that our thoughts usually do is returned to zero by understanding emptiness. And when we return to our zero in that way, then there is fresh space for new ideas to arise. If we don't return to zero in this way through connecting with emptiness, then we just follow after our old ideas, our old confusion, our old habits. And in this state, it is very difficult for fresh intelligence to take birth. Therefore, understanding emptiness helps us to let go of our clinging, let go of our reification, and return to freshness, return to the very basics of who we are.
다 가자 가르자 디 뽑아당 아게사 디 개발지 디지 가르다지 제자다 데다 데버를 셰르사네 다들 말들 저스가 다요시
Lasso?
다들 주주주 되게 저거 와야 다들 대삼시기 안다리디 로좀 측이에만 대삼시기에 다 고쳐봐 제잖아
Lasso?
다 고쳐 추규 제잖아 맞아 들으면서 섬다
Lasso?
다 조조데 가장 고도 주변의 신기 로종 사드지 측용로 균dü바 드지 가서에 지금 냠랭이 냉가도 상물로 수 드기제들의 용과 조다 하다지 초진행아 저기 되게 측이데 로르심네 에네 귤자르 근데 총도 버총에네 지금 니 말을 지금 소소 탱군도 버쳐야 돼
Lasso?
근데 제도 버총이비나 안 된대지 가서에다 펜토로 용시바 그래서도
Lasso? I think we can allow what has been said thus far to suffice as an explanation of the 8 verses for training the mind. As was said previously, the Lojong teachings are designed to be short in terms of their words, but pithy in terms of their meaning. So I feel that these instructions that we have explored together can become valuable support to your practice, since the Lojong teachings contain all of the essential points for how to practice. Furthermore, I feel that it would be very valuable and helpful if you were to memorize the words of this text. Doing that will provide the support of having a further reminder in your day-to-day lives to practice the meaning of the Lojong teachings. So in this way, I'm confident that these teachings will be beneficial.